they do not expect that he will serve any time, and this has nothing to do with him being a public figure. Sentencing in federal courts is a process. It's a mechanical process that requires practically going down a checklist of many factors. You have to see if there's factors that are aggravating, factors that are mitigating. He potentially, right now he's accused of these tax crimes as well. That has not been resolved. So the issue of whether there will be any priors to consider is still open. But there's other factors as well, whether the crime was violent, whether there were any victims that had to be made whole. As we know, this is not really applicable here. So I don't think that this will result in incarceration, but we will obviously see what will happen depending on the outcome of the other case and how quickly this will go.
Nicole, as we wait to hear from the special counsel in this case, he's going to be speaking from the podium in Wilmington shortly here. I wonder your thoughts on the quick nature of these deliberations, only 3 hours, and what type of case Hunter Biden's attorneys will bring on appeal.
I think the reason that it went so fast with the deliberations is that if you think about it, this case actually is pretty simple on its face. That's why there was not a lot of witnesses, not a lot of evidence, because this case revolved around his intent and whether he committed these acts that he was accused of knowingly. So the jury can consider credibility issues, can consider circumstantial evidence to create a picture of whether this was knowing and intentional. And I think that in their minds, given his prior history of drug use and his own candor in discussing his drug use problems, I think they just didn't have a big dilemma right there in order to determine that he was actually guilty and committed it knowingly.
So what could the defense do on appeal realistically to change the narrative, to change minds, Nicole, or do you not really see a path for that?
I think it will be very complicated. First of all, the success of appeal depends on what objections they asserted on the record. There is certain procedure in bringing an appeal. You have to preserve it during the trial. So we would need to know, reading the transcript, how effective they were at doing that. But in terms of the legal theory and in terms of the jury's decision and in terms of the fact that there was not a lot of witnesses, not a lot of evidence, I don't think this will be an easy appeal for them to be successful on.
It's interesting to consider. We spoke earlier with Nick Ackerman, the former Watergate prosecutor. Nicole, he said it would behoove Hunter Biden and his legal team to plead guilty at the next trial, the tax evasion trial, to get preferred favorable treatment. Do you agree?
There is some merit to that. It really depends on the evidence in the other case, but I think it's also pretty straightforward. I don't think he has a lot of defense, so it would be better to just get it out there and be proactive about finalizing these cases instead of dragging them to trial. If the evidence is overwhelming and if your chances are slim to none at prevailing, so they have to have a honest discussion and see what's the best course of proceeding. But I think that a guilty plea would make a lot of sense.
Wow.
Well, Nicole, I also wonder about whether or not Hunter Biden, having made the decision not to testify in his own defense this time around, maybe should consider doing so in the appellate process. I mean, if all of this is about his state of mind and his intention when he bought that gun in 2018, can anyone else really describe that other than he himself?
You make a great point, but in the legal process, it's a little different. It's usually advisable not to put the defendant on the stand because that opens a lot of doors to questions that can just ruin their defense and ruin their case. And I think that in his particular case, given the books that he wrote, given the statements that he made, I think it's better that he just does not testify on his own behalf. That would be a better legal strategy. But as I said, these two cases